Welcome back to our glorious Oda shogunate. Today there's a few things we want to get done. First of all, we want to release our colonies in Alaska. To do so, we're going to move our capital down to Australia. Before we do though, we need to make sure that there's a colony that's close to finishing, because I can't release land that I've full cored, which I have for all my colonies of course. Thank you Paradox for making it so we couldn't do that. So yeah, we have a colony here that's at 91%, so it's going to be done quite soon. So let's move our capital down. We don't quite have enough money, so I think we're going to take a few loans. We'll probably pay them off relatively quickly, so it's definitely not a big deal. Grabbing a few loans is 2 enough? Yes. So we'll move down. It doesn't really matter where we move in Australia as long as we're in Australia. We'll try to pick somewhere relatively cheap, because the price does change based on the amount of goods in the market. For example, it's more expensive to move over to this side of Australia than it is to move to this side. So we'll move. Our economy, of course, is going to collapse because all of our local governors back in Japan will explode, and so control will start to decrease. So we'll want to move back relatively quickly after moving there. There's also the Ming. Last time I was talking about going to war with them, and I've slept on it, dreamed about it, and now I'm feeling a little hesitant. We're very close to getting professionalism, so I'm thinking we'll wait to get professionalism, then we'll quickly research the techs as fast as possible, and then quickly build a landed army before we start the war. Our CB Hegemony Prov CB lasts until 1493, so we have 9 years that we could declare the war in, and if it expires we could always just make it again. As long as we ourselves don't become a hegemony, there is a risk we become diplomatic hegemony because our diplomatic reputation's a little too high. So let's stop doing diplomatic endeavors, if only for the moment. We don't want that accidentally sabotaging us. Alright, our capital is now in Australia. Once the colony finishes up here in Alaska, which should be relatively soon, we'll be able to release land there and form a colony. Once that's done, we'll of course move out of Australia. There won't be any reason for us to hang around, at least until we need to release another colony. And since I only want to have 1 colony per region, that will likely be when we eventually discover and start colonizing California. So we can look forward to that. Yep, here we go. We actually have the option here to release a colony in Siberia. Should we do this? I don't think so. It's really tempting, actually. Form a Siberian colony we can feed all this worthless Siberian land to. Should we do it? It's really tempting. It is, because this land is worthless to us, you know? So if we could just hand it over to a colony. Problem is it's also decreasing our control from having all of this land. I didn't expect to be able to release it, so I hadn't really thought about it, so I'm having to think about it now. I think we're going to do it. Let's form a colonial subject. We don't have to give them all of the territory, right? We can just feed them the bits of land that we don't necessarily want as time goes on. So for example, we'll just start giving them some of the most northerly parts. This may be a bad idea, but I think the appeals outweigh the potential downsides here. What should we call them? Currently they're Central Omak or Omok, but that's not a very good name. Do the Japanese have a specific name for Siberia? I'm not sure. What would be a good name? I could look it up right now, but I think I'll leave it to you. If you've got a good name for this Siberian colony, do let me know and we'll change it to that. But yes, we're just going to feed them all of these northerly territories. They can be like this for the moment. I of course want to keep the large amount of forted locations I have down here. And to be fair, a lot of these fortifications aren't even in Siberia, they're in Manchuria, so it's not much of a bother. There we go, we have access to professionalism. We're going to embrace it immediately. Then we're going to cancel all the other research we're doing for the moment, except for the one we're currently researching, and move over straight down to get armories, as well as the next tier of units, both regular and levies. We also have a unique tech here for being Japanese that increases morale, so I think we'll grab that first, then we'll grab gunsmiths. We'll have to see how things go. We're still waiting on our colony in Alaska. It's very close to being finished now though. And once it is, we can release the colony there. Finally, our Alaskan colony is finished. We'll release them as a colonial nation. Then we'll feed them all of the land here in Alaska to manage on our behalf. There's not much reason for us to cling to this territory anyway. There are a few bits of land we can't feed them for whatever reason. This little island here and this little island down here. Despite being in Alaska, we can't give them these. I guess because they're too far away from their borders. But that kind of works to our benefit because of course we want to release Australia as well. So what we'll do is we'll move our capital up here to Alaska so we can release a colony in Australia. Should we do that right now? Our economy is taking a beating because control is decreasing in Japan proper, but I think we do have some locations in Australia where we don't have a majority, so we should just be able to release them straight away as a colony. So let's move our capital up to this tiny island up here. Once we're up there, we should be able to release a colony in Australia. I'll likely keep a part of a smaller part of Australia so I can move back and release other colonies in the future. I'm thinking this little island here will likely be our Australian outpost. There we go, we have armories. It's pretty tempting to kind of just spam these everywhere, but let's be a little cautious. We need to take into account the demand of the goods when we build them. It's something we can correct because we can just build all of them and then build the goods to bring down the costs. But usually the cost of maintaining armories is one of the bigger costs in the game. I often see people losing a lot of money just because they're maintaining these buildings. And we can always just turn them off. Let's build them all kind of centrally to start with. We'll throw some down in the east as well. We'll need to keep an eye on our economy. Of course, we're still doing very poorly. We're still waiting for our capital to move over to Alaska. I didn't take into account that if a severe winter triggers here, it stops the capital being built, which is slowing down our move up here, as well as the lack of goods, obviously. Of course, we don't have much trade power in the markets up here, despite having our subjects divert their trade to us. So we're having a hard time getting the goods we need to move our capital here. And as you can see, because it's a severe winter, the move has now stalled. Oh well, I'm sure it'll be fine. Speaking of fine, we now have access to man-at-arms, so we can begin expanding and building an army. We don't really have much money at the moment, and we're having a decline in our income, which makes me a little hesitant. Our economy is kind of fluctuating day to day. We really need to move back to Japan so we can regain our control there. But it's going to be about 100 days before our capital moves, so we're very close to the point. There we go, our capital is now up in Alaska, so we should be able to release a colonial nation down here in Australia. So we'll do just that, we'll release them. Who should we place in charge? I don't think it really matters. Let's place a rather distant member of the Oda clan in charge, at least for now. We'll need to come up with a name for Australia as well. As discussed, we're going to feed them all of our Australian holdings except for that tiny little island up here, which we'll keep for ourselves so that we can move down into it in order to release more colonies in the Americas. The rest of Australia, though, we'll hand over to them to manage on our behalf. Whether they make much use of it is really up to them. I'm not too bothered either way. We can't quite hand all of it to them yet because they don't have a border with all of Australia, but that's fine. Now we can finally move our capital back to Osaka. We're going to need a bit more money than we currently have. Let's slap the burgers for some money, and there we go, we can move to Osaka. Let's bring down our colonial spending a bit so we don't go into a deficit. Let's also slap the peasants to get rid of that malice to our stability. There's our recruitment law. I think we'll just go for expanded levies for the more soldiers. We're not really going to be able to match the Ming, but even so, it feels like more soldiers is probably better. All right, we have triumphantly returned to Japan. We can see our tax base is falling down to 600. We need to quickly rebuild our local governors here so that we can go back to having control. And in so doing, have money. We've managed to repair our economy a little bit, so now we're going to start building our army. First of all, we're going to just promote the 2 units we have here of heavy infantry up to men-at-arms. Let's actually take a look at a Ming right now. Problem is, Ming is almost definitely going to call up mercenaries, right? Similar to how the Koreans did. It would be really nice if they went to war with Korea and they both bled each other out so that we could swoop in and take advantage of that. But I doubt we'll be that lucky. There is something to be said for going just mass heavy cavalry. I hate to do it because it feels very cheap, but it does work. If we create enough heavy cavalry, we can really overwhelm anyone we fight. But as I said, it feels so cheap. Let's try and build an actual army instead of doing something cheap like that. We'll try to build a well-rounded, respectable military. I'm thinking around 10 units of heavy infantry, 10 units of light infantry, and then 5 of the 2 types of cavalry. That would give us the combined armed bonus from having equal amounts of each sort of soldier, and it will be just a nice, respectable army overall. We do need to research the next tier of units, cavalry, and the light infantry. I guess we could go for handgunners or crossbowmen. It might be better to go for crossbowmen because we have a lack of guns, as you can imagine. Only just started building our gun economy now. But handgunners do morale damage, which will be very helpful in the breaking the morale of the Ming soldiers. That's what's kind of going to decide things, I feel. Because there's so many of them, we really just need to rout them as fast as possible and not let the battles drag out. If they do drag out, we'll simply just lose because our army is going to be smaller and we'll be dismembered, as it were, relatively quickly. Whereas if we can rout them very quickly with few losses, we have much more potential to actually win a protracted conflict. Speaking of which, I think our CB has expired. Yes, it has. So let's build a spy network and create another one. Ooh, wait a minute. We've just got an event, Celestial Ambition, that lets us declare war on Korea with an annexation war goal. I wasn't really prepared for this. We could just say no, and then we'll get the war goal for 15 years. This could work very well if we could just conquer vast swathes of Korea right now. Let's not declare war right now. We're still building up our army. We're almost at where I'd like it to be. We just need to make the handgunners. Right, our army is finished. Now we come to a horrible realization. There is a marriage union between Korea, Dai Viet, aka Vietnam, and this other small nation, and that means Ming is going to defend them. I was wondering why Ming hadn't been attacking Korea, and this could be the reason. Fighting Ming isn't that big of a deal. They don't have much of a navy, but the Korean navy has ballooned to 210 galleys. That's a lot. The Vietnamese are also on 98, which does put us in not a great position. I suppose our only real option is to declare war, wait for the Ming to peace out, then see about getting our army over to Korea and hopefully fighting them. It feels really bad though. Before we do that, should we expand our navy? The problem is, we've already spent a lot of money on our army. In fact, we need to build a few more armories because we have a negative manpower growth right now. Our economy can easily sustain it though. We're making quite a lot of money since the amount of colonies we have has decreased. From them being completed and me not making more, it's important we don't make more, right? Let's actually set our vassal here in Siberia to scootage so they don't join the war. We don't want them to get just completely annihilated. And let's make sure our vassals in Korea also aren't in. Yep, we don't want them to come in. We could call them in. Together they will have around 30,000 men, so they might end up being helpful. Normally I would ferry my army over to Korea first, so that we can quickly fight them with our large army, but because of the Ming, we'll definitely be swarmed in a war we're not really ready for. So instead we're going to stay in Japan. The real question is, should we try and match the Korean galleys? I don't think so. There's so many of them. I'm not sure where they get the money for them. Because Ming, with its 5,000 base tax, only has 29 ships. I suppose it's just due to a lack of things to spend it on. I really should have taken their coastal provinces in our last war, because that would have shaved down their sailor income. First things first, let's build a few more armories in order to maintain our manpower income. We're very close to researching heavy carracks. In fact, let's make them our priority. But I don't think, even if we had a lot of them, they'd be able to overcome 200 or so galleys. You know what? I think we're just going to declare war. Let's bite the bullet and try it. With a navy so large, there's a good chance the Koreans will ferry their army over to us, where we can destroy them. And we can see how our massive fort network up here works, because I'm sure the Ming will go over and occupy it. So we can see how many casualties they take. The Koreans, if we're lucky, will also head up here and try and occupy all these forts. So we can see doubly the effect of them. Maybe we'll just kill everyone. There is, of course, a problem with the marriage partners, like Vietnam. Hopefully we can navigate them, though. Before we declare war, let's go over and slap the various honor options, specifically the one for extra levies and higher tax income. And now let's do it. No more cowardice. Let's declare war on Korea. As discussed, our number one priority is simply just going to be hiding in Japan until the situation stabilizes, at which point we can think about making other moves. I'm just going to disband all of the soldiers we've called up in Siberia, because they'll just get annihilated almost immediately by the Ming. We may call them up later on. We could potentially use them to help siege down enemy territory. Looks like the Ming are actually willing to make peace. Oh, the Ming have too much war exhaustion. They've been at war for a long time with a rebellion here that they haven't been able to defeat, and they're both at 100% war exhaustion. And so that has caused the Ming to be at 100% war exhaustion. The game's brokenness may benefit us here. This means we could essentially just take the Ming apart over and over again, and they wouldn't be able to stop us because of their massive war exhaustion. We could just take a bunch of land right now from the Ming. This feels really, really cheap though. Like, I really don't want to do this. How long has the war been going on between them and their vassal? It's been going on for 13 years. Is it likely to end anytime soon? Both sides are at 100% war exhaustion, so the war just kind of doesn't end. Have they full occupied them? It looks like they full occupied them. Why haven't they made peace then? I think they full occupied everyone who joined the rebellion as well. So again, why haven't they made peace? We just don't know. Well, let's wait a little bit at least. We can't peace out the Ming just yet because they've just joined the war, but it's definitely an option. It looks like the Koreans are ferrying their army over. That's excellent. Although it looks like they're going to land in Hokkaido, which isn't quite excellent because I haven't moved my army up there. I suppose we could just let them siege it. Them occupying Hokkaido is not the end of the world. They can at least take big attrition because, of course, we still have our attrition modifier that we got from the asymmetrical warfare reform. Let's scatter our levies across the island of Japan, or islands for the moment, just so that we have somebody nearby to react to potential landings. Looks like they are landing in the mainland. That's excellent. We'll just clean them up very easily. Didn't even take any casualties in that battle. To be fair, that was with a small group of regulars. What we'll need to keep an eye out for is the mercenaries once they eventually come out. For now, we can focus on cleaning up the regulars and levies that attempt to land. Well, okay, the Ming have capitulated, I guess because of their really high war exhaustion. You know, I don't really want to take land for them. It feels really bad. I could just white peace them, I guess. But the problem is they still have this war with the rebels. Until that ends, their war exhaustion is never really going to go down. So even if we just white peaced them, it wouldn't really solve the issue. It feels terrible, but I think we are going to take some land from the Ming. We're going to take some land along their coast and release Wu here likely. Just something like this. It does feel awful. Could I help them in some way? I guess, could we attack Taiwan? I think we might be able to potentially. Problem is, they full occupied them, so it's not like we can attack Taiwan and occupy them and annex them ourselves because they're already occupied by the Ming. I'll need to think on it. I guess I could open ye old consul and try and solve things that way. I really hate doing that though. And it'll invalidate my achievements. I won't be able to get the start with 8 privileges for the nobility and revoke them all achievement if we open the consul, but I think it's likely a bridge we're going to have to cross to save the Ming from themselves. We don't want them to just die from something unrelated to us, right? For whatever reason, the Koreans keep landing their armies here in this little alcove, so we just keep murdering them when they arrive. Because this is a marriage union, we should be able to white peace Dai Viet once they've taken enough damage. The problem will be once their rulers die and they merge into a personal union. We'll have to cross that bridge when we come to it though. For now, we'll just keep murdering the Koreans as they land. I didn't show it, but the Ming took, I think, more than 50,000 attrition due to sieging our forts, and they didn't actually end up taking any of them. Because they kept deploying units to siege the forts, then that unit would run out of manpower and wouldn't be able to siege anymore. Then they'd have to replace them with someone else, which kind of went on over and over again, so I do think the fort strategy worked quite well. This is not really how I intended it to work. I intended to bleed out the Ming and then occupy them, not get all their land for free because they ran into a bug with one of their rebellious vassals. I feel cheated out of my glory, the glory and honor that was promised to me from slaughtering countless amounts of Ming soldiers. Alright, we're going to make peace with Dai Viet, I think. We're going to use a little trick where we let them humiliate us. They get some prestige, we lose some prestige, but they leave the war. It essentially costs us nothing because our prestige is sitting at 100% due to all of our modifiers, so it's a very quick and easy way to just deal with the issue. That leaves just Korea and this nation here, who I think they are in a personal union with Korea, so they can't be pieced out. They're miles away, though I doubt they'll provide much support, and they don't have much of an army anyway. As discussed though, the main problem is actually getting over to Korea. They have 43,000 men. How many of those are really left? They've got 20,000 up here deployed in Hokkaido. Are we aware of where the others are? I'm not seeing them around, so they're likely still in Korea. That's fine. We can just wait for them eventually to be ferried over and kill them. As long as they do keep ferrying them over. They might start to hesitate with ferrying their armies over now that they're kind of alone in the war. We'll just have to watch and see what their moves are. Ooh, there goes the shogun. He was quite an okay shogun. I think we'd managed to increase his stats a bit through parliamentary issues. He's been replaced by his successor, who isn't that good. Actually, he's pretty bad. Middling at best, I'd say. We'll have to hope he has a good heir. We're not really seeing the prodigies I would like to see, but it's no matter. A ruler's stats really don't matter that much in the grand scheme of things. It does look like the Koreans are feeling a little too hesitant to actually attack us now, so I think we're going to have to start making moves towards attacking them. They have around 100 galleys here, so we need to be careful about avoiding them. Unfortunately, actually, they're positioned in such a way to stop our navy escaping. That's too bad. We definitely lose a fight with them just because we don't have as many galleys as they do. I probably should have positioned my galley navy better. Oh, well, they've moved. I guess they don't want to be here anymore, so we can escape. They do seem to prioritize just blocking Osaka for some reason. I guess it's because it is our capital, but I'm not sure I agree with the ideal. Since half their army is currently caught up in Hokkaido and they don't seem to want to move them, and I think all of their regulars are here actually. There's a very big regular army there. we could potentially land in Korea and take advantage of that. Let's move our regular army into position first of all, so that we could quickly transport them over to Korea. We are losing a bit of money at the moment. The fact that we have a new ruler on the throne is increasing the cost of court, obviously. Our main cost is still our colonies, though, and buildings now that we have so many armories. We could just turn a lot of these armories off, which I may do if the situation becomes very negative, which it likely will. How much of our army could we actually fit onto our navy? Most of it. Let's just quickly transport over to our vassals' territory. We are now in Korea. We should be able to occupy all of this territory here without the Koreans getting involved, simply because they won't have access through our vassals, and our vassals shouldn't give them access. It'll take a while to siege down these forts, though. We could call in one of our vassals here. This vassal here doesn't actually border the Koreans in the north, only in the south here. So if we call them in, they shouldn't get swarmed by the Koreans or bring them in, and they can help us with these sieges. Really, we should have brought some cannons along. I didn't actually bother researching them because I didn't think I'd really need them, which was a mistake on my part. I always hesitate to make cannons and only end up making them once they're 100% useful. The real problem is Korea has lots of modifiers that makes their defensive ability a lot higher, so it does take a long time to siege down their forts. It looks like the Koreans are ferrying their army back over. Oh, are they? Yeah, they're calling up mercenaries now. Just as we expected, really. Have they landed? No, they haven't landed anywhere in Japan, so it looks like they're just landing here in South Korea, where we're occupying them. That should honestly work quite well because of our regular army. We should just be able to stack wipe them quite quickly and cleanly, as long as they don't overwhelm us. But they likely will eventually overwhelm us once they start pulling out those mercenaries in earnest. But it's not really something we can stop. It's just something that's going to happen that we have to accept. We could potentially force them to capitulate by doing enough damage. It doesn't look like they're really taking that much war exhaustion from us slaughtering their armies, though. So I wouldn't rate the chances of that happening very highly. Who knows, though, if we kill enough of the mercenaries, we might be able to push them to the point. At the very least, because they're ferrying them across via sea, we're able to fight them piecemeal instead of all at once. They're definitely calling up a lot, though. They now have 50,000 or so mercenaries. Surely, eventually, they'll run out of money, right? We can hope, we can dream. At the very least, our regular army is performing very well. We're killing a lot of these Koreans. We've killed 120,000. The problem is the mercenaries, right? They'll just keep coming. They are actually carrying out some land invasions of Japan, which is good, because it means our little levy armies, and by little I mean 60,000 or so, can just clean them up without much issue. Because they're so small, these armies, they won't be able to overwhelm us with numbers. All right, what I think we're going to start doing is ferrying our army of levies over to Korea to bulk out our numbers in Korea. One of the problems we're having is lack of manpower, meaning that our regulars, despite winning every battle, are being kind of ground down, which is kind of inevitable. It's going to cost us a bit of money to maintain the armory economy, though. We could always mint max. I really don't like doing it. It feels like taking a loan, right? It's like accepting a loss. And as minting will increase all of our costs overall as well, it's something I'm very hesitant to do. But I think if there was ever a time to do so, this is probably one of those times. Let's bite the bullet. We'll mint enough just so we stay in the green. We don't really need anything more than that, at least for the moment, right? I do like to think that we might have done enough damage that Koreans are kind of slowing down in their mercenary production. They're asking us for peace, and I'm not seeing them recruit a bunch more mercenaries, but that might just be wishful thinking on my part, right? One of the things we can do that's very cheap is we can just nip across the border from our vassals who haven't joined the war's lands, enter Korea, and then just head straight back. They can't pursue us because they don't have access through our vassals. I'm feeling kind of positive. The Koreans just don't seem to be calling up more guys. I think it might be time that we try and go on the offensive. It is scary, though, and they still have a lot of forts. The war goal for this war, because it's an annexation war, is to take their capital. Unfortunately, despite this being an annexation war, that we don't get a neat peace option that full annexes them or anything like that. Instead, we can just take a bunch of their territory because the cost of taking land is reduced by 50%. You know, though, Korea actually became the cultural hegemony, though. So after this war, we could potentially fabricate the take-down hegemony CB on Korea, which is even better. But that's something to think about once this war's over. What we'll likely take in this war, if we can, is just as much of their territory as we could. Something like this. Despite the war goal being for the capital, I don't really see a reason to take it specifically. It is a very valuable location, making them 100 ducats. But I would much rather take as much of their territory as we could. Maybe I'm thinking about that wrongly, though. Maybe we should take their capital region. They also have a silver mine here, which makes around 90 ducats. Do they have any other silver in the country or gold? Looks like they have some silver in the north and some silver in the south. Gold? I actually think we took a lot of their gold that was in the south of the country. They don't really have much else. They got one here, one there. I wish I could see a wealth breakdown for a nation. We can see their tax base breakdown, but I want to see a wealth breakdown, like when we look at ourselves, and we can see the most valuable locations and the biggest tax contributors, because then I could prioritize taking the most wealthy locations from Korea. Well, let's not be too hasty, I think. Let's go up and occupy this little location here. It's not got a fort, so we can just occupy it. That should lure out what's left of the Korean army, so we can potentially destroy them. Then, once they're gone, I would be a lot more comfortable calling up the boys to help us out. I think the Koreans have hit their limit. It looks like all of their mercenaries have disbanded. I think maybe they have just run out of money. If so, that's excellent. It's time for us to go on the offensive against them. Koreans are a little bit like those robots from Futurama. Except for Koreans, once you kill a certain amount of mercenaries, they hit their quota and shut down. There's only, 12,000 left? And to be fair, actually, 6,000 of those are the nation in the personal union with them. Let's call up our guys now. We'll call up our 2 vassals in the region to help us with the Koreans. We just need to beat them enough that they're willing to peace out, which shouldn't be too difficult. Their willingness to make peace is actually quite high right now. It may be tempting to continue the war as long as possible. If we do, we could take even more because the cost of taking this land is increased because we haven't occupied the forts. So once we occupy those forts, we could decrease the cost of taking the land and take even more. But I think it's probably better to just peace out as soon as possible. Remember, we are inflation maxing at the moment, and we don't want to drink too long of that poison chalice. So I think the moment the Koreans are okay with a peace deal, we'll sign one and take large amounts of their territory. We'll leave them with their capital, of course, otherwise we'll have to personally invade it and siege it, which would elongate the war by quite a lot. Right, we'll make peace. Even though we can't fully take this province, we'll take part of it. And I guess we'll take 100 ducats from them. There we go, a victory. I should have gone over the losses. We lost around less than 100,000, I think, whereas the Koreans lost 250,000 or so, maybe more than that. Now we need to see about getting our inflation down. It's approached 10, which we don't like. Bring down all of our maintenances. We're of course going to release Wu now to manage our territories over in China for us. We'll probably feed them a little bit. Look how tiny and pathetic they are up against the great Ming. Ming still hasn't managed to win their war with their rebellious vassals though. We could enforce peace on South Taiwan. Let's see if we can improve our relationships with South Taiwan, and then we could enforce peace on them, forcing them to make peace with Ming. That would end the conflict, solving the issue, and give Ming some breathing room. The smart thing to do would just be let the war continue forever and continuously bully the Ming, since they're always going to be at max war exhaustion due to it, but that's too mean for me, so we'll do without doing that. With our Korean territory, we'll of course hand it out to our existing vassals. I do think we're reaching a point where we kind of don't want to make any more, but we're going to make at least 2 more, I think. Maybe 1 more. All of our vassals so far have been fiefdoms, so there's no real problem with us making some actual vassals to manage the territory, because they won't take into account the fiefdoms when calculating their disloyalty. So there we go, we'll divide Korea up even more. We are going to start thinking about integrating some of them now, specifically this one in the south, because they don't share a border with Korea now, because they've been fully cut off. We could simply integrate them, and the Koreans and Ming wouldn't be able to invade this land unless they got access through our vassals, meaning it's probably time to bring them into the fold. Alright, our situation has stabilized a little. We're still focusing on bringing down our inflation. I've turned off most of my armories while we're doing this, because after all, high inflation increases the building maintenance costs. So having them turned off saves a bit of money. Ming is still trapped in their internal war. Apparently, the rebels would accept me enforcing peace on them, but they'd also refuse. It says they should accept, they have more positive than negatives, but it also says they would refuse. I did save and then try this and it didn't work. I just got pulled into the war. Normally I would just switch the game rule that lets you switch countries, but unfortunately you're not allowed to enable it if we start with achievements enabled, as we've done so. So that's not an option for me. So I likely am going to have to fire up the console in order to solve the issue, as we don't want Ming to just continuously suffer forever in an eternal war. It will take the fun out of having to kill millions of them. There we go, we've finally brought our inflation down. So we can start thinking about turning buildings back on and actually building things again without the excess costs. of building things when having high inflation. We can also think about turning our armories back on. Let's just turn them all on, see what the cost is like, and then maybe turn some off, if it's truly insurmountable. Well, it looks like it's fine for now. We do want to bring down the cost of these armories though, as you can see they're very expensive. And it's the lack of weapons and guns that's causing it, but that's to be expected. One thing I've actually forgotten to do, I've just realised, is I've forgotten to spread my navies around again to increase control. To be fair though, we've researched light ships, so we could just start using those to spread control and make dedicated control spreading navies instead of relying on galleys to do it. If we look, a single galley increases maritime presence by 0.24, whereas a single light ship increases it by 0.28. Both cost about the same, but the light ships are worse at fighting than the galleys, so I'd prefer these light ships just to work as control increasers and never actually see combat. So we'll likely just set them up to do just that, and then we can use our galleys for actual combat in the future. Alright, our truce is about to expire with Korea. We have our CB, the takedown hegemony CB on Korea. Before we declare war, I'd like to go and fix the Ming problem, so I'm going to make a save here. Then I'll close the game and see about fixing that. There, that's done. I really don't know what Ming's problem was. I tagged over and just pressed the Annex Revolters button and ended the conflict. Because of that though, I'm no longer able to earn achievements in this run. My run has been corrupted. How horrible. All because the foolish Ming couldn't press a button. I'll remember this. Now we'll just wait for our truce to end with Korea, which is actually next month. There we go. Now we'll declare war. The Ming will come in. Their war exhaustion's so high though, there's a good chance they'll peace out relatively quickly. I suppose what I could have done is use the console to reduce their war exhaustion, but I think I've already given them enough. We'll declare war. Ooh, actually, it looks like I accidentally pulled in my vassals. Were they not set to scutage? I'm pretty sure I didn't cancel their scutage, but no, they've been pulled in. All of them? No, it looks like most of them. Funnily enough, Wu didn't get called in though, but that's bad because now they'll all just get beaten up and destroyed by Ming plus Korea. Ah well, let's call everyone up first. One of the really annoying things about having all these colonies is every time I raise my levies now, I have to go over to the colonies and disband all of the soldiers that get called up, because I'm not going to ferry these guys over, and I don't really want them to die, even if I could ferry them over. But now we'll do the same thing we did in the previous wars. We'll wait for the Ming to peace out. Then we'll think about invading Korea. We'll see if Korea is still able to maintain their massive mercenary armies they did in the previous conflicts. I'm curious to know whether they can after we took that land from them. I suppose we'll get to watch them trample down our vassals. That should give us some good insights into the situation. Though Korea probably doesn't need to call up mercenaries to handle our vassals because they are very weak, as you can imagine. Well, 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 would you look at that? Our guys are actually beating Korea here because they're calling up their own massive amounts of mercenaries. This is why vassals are quite good to have, because they can join in on the mercenary wars on your side. Not really what I intended, but I guess it's what's happening. We'll continue to sit things out at least until Ming is gone, and then we'll join the fray ourselves. There we go, Ming has capitulated just as before. We're not going to take anything from them this time. It was unfair last time, and it's doubly unfair this time. Although actually, we'll take this tiny island off the coast of Japan. That's all we'll take from the Ming this time. They'll get theirs next time around. Now we just need to deal with the Koreans. It doesn't actually look like they've summoned mercenaries yet. The main strength is of course Daiviet, but Daiviet is unlikely to really get involved. In fact, we can get them out right now. Let's get rid of them. The main annoyance from having Daiviet in is they'll collectively reduce our war score by just being in the war. Honestly, I'm not even sure if I need to intervene. Our vassals are kind of just winning so well with their massive mercenary armies. And Korea doesn't seem to be calling up the massive mercenary armies that they normally do. Maybe we could just sit things out. I think we will go around and try and grab some of the Korean armies though, since it looks like our vassals want to run headlong into them, and I guess they do win. I was about to say they were going to run headlong into them and get destroyed, but the vassals are winning. This is madness. How are our vassals able to sweep the Koreans aside so easily? I guess they are Koreans themselves, so maybe they're fighting on a even playing field, but I mean, they're not Korea, so they don't have the benefits of all the Korean advancements and stuff like that. If nothing else, I guess we'll go around and try and wipe out any Korean armies we see. And if we do start seeing them call up mercenaries, we'll try and ambush them and destroy them as quickly as possible. Since the vassals are here, I'd really rather leave the sieging to them. That way we can avoid taking too many casualties from having to siege down territory. Problem is, vassals tend to start sieging and then immediately stop to go fight enemies, which is annoying, because they'll end a siege when it's very close to finishing, to run off and fight some tiny enemy army they could probably just ignore. While I'm here killing all these Koreans, I'm thinking about it, and I think there's two possibilities. Either A, the land we took in the south was so prosperous the Koreans are now too poor to hire mercenaries, which I doubt because their base tax is still 1,800. It's higher than ours. We're only on 1,100 at the moment. The other alternative, I think, is the Koreans have embraced professionalism now, and so they're hiring their own regular armies, which means they probably have a lot of armories, and it could be the armories are draining their income to the point where they're now not spending that income on hiring mercenaries. It sounds silly, but that's the only possibility that really comes to mind for why they wouldn't be hiring mercenaries now despite still having a large economy. It's the only thing that really makes sense. The idea that they have a new cost that is stopping them and putting them off calling up more mercenaries. Well, I suppose it works to my benefit. Hopefully we enter the same condition with the Ming. If the Ming don't call up mercenaries, we can probably defeat them pretty handedly. And there we go, Korea has capitulated. Because this is a takedown hegemony CB, we can take even more land than we did last time. You know what? We could actually vassalize Korea. We could just straight up vassalize them. That's very tempting, actually. It is, isn't it? Just get our own pet Korea. It sounds fun. Silly, and probably damaging more so than anything else, because I guess if we made them a vassal instead of a fiefdom, we don't have that many vassals, just 2. But Korea's definitely going to be rebellious, aren't they? I guess what we could do is we could vassalize Korea, give them the vassals we have, give them the vassals we have as their own, which would decrease the amount of vassals we have and may make Korea loyal. The alternative, of course, is just to take their land. Since we can just vassalize them, we should be able to take a lot of their territory. Yep, we can pretty much expel them from Korea. It does result in a lot of antagonism, though most of that is just with Korea. The only one going above 50 antagonism from this would be the Ming and, of course, Korea themselves. But why would we do that when we could just vassalize them, right? To be fair, that makes even more antagonism. But again, it's mainly just with Korea. Problem is, though, if we vassalize Korea and they have so much antagonism, it might be hard bringing them round to a loyal state. I'm not sure. I really do like the idea of just vassalizing Korea outright. It probably wouldn't work well, though. You know what, we're going to do it. We're going to do it. We'll vassalize Korea. What could possibly go wrong? Then we'll have them give us a bunch of money too. Of course, Korea is going to be very rebellious. For a long time, really. We're going to need to get their loyalty up. To be fair, a lot of this disloyalty stems from them being forcibly vassalized. We'll have to see how their country strength versus mine changes in the coming months. And of course, we'll have to start improving our relationship. It's going to be pretty hard to get their relationship over to the positive, though. We'll just have to hope for the best. Look at that minus 4,000 from antagonism. We may never be able to fully bring them round. We can try, though. It's too bad Korea doesn't get a cool flag for being a vassal of Japan. I suppose I'm not Japan, though. I am the Oda shogunate. Maybe if we enforce religion and make them a Shinto nation. We probably don't want to do that right now, though, since they're so angry. Something we could think about for the future, though. Alright, we've managed to bring Korea down to being positive towards us. What's funny is, because they're a member of the Middle Kingdom, they're actually getting the modifiers from the Middle Kingdom towards making them loyal, which, I mean, it shouldn't work that way, but I guess it does, right? We've also handed out the support loyalists and a strengthen family ties. Strengthen family ties, in case you didn't know, comes from this government reform, barony rule, which increases max control in every rural location by 5 and gives us 2 extra nobles in rural locations. Plus gives us access to strengthen family ties, which basically acts like a second support loyalists, except it also increases the efficiency of the cabinet of the nation we're doing it in and increases our prestige. Not that that's very useful. Our truce has expired with Ming, and we do have our destroy hegemony CB. Oh, no, we don't. In 19 months, we'll have a destroy hegemony CB on them. And then it will be time for us to test our new Korean friends against the great Ming. Or Ming will attack me first. This is really too bad. Because Ming has attacked me, I of course can't really take land because I'm the defender. And the defender gets a big increase to taking land. We can see plus 150%. So it's not really viable for us to take land in this war. We'll just have to end the war as quickly as possible, really, and hope that our hegemony CB that we're going to get doesn't expire before our truce ends. It could go either way, though. It's very up in the air. What's also up in the air is the success rate of us and our vassals. It's going to be curious to see. Looks like the Koreans have actually dipped back down into being negative. From an event, it looks like. They were at only -5, I think, from events. We'll have to see if they tick back up. Even if they don't, I guess there's a potential that they separate peace Ming, which could be annoying if they give them a bunch of territory. Let's send them officers, which will increase their loyalty by an extra 5. Then really we'll just have to hope. Actually, yeah, let's call up levies. That will increase our strength. It may cause the overall strength of vassals versus me to decrease. If the Koreans take some casualties against the Ming, that will also help. Yep, was enough to bring them back into the fold, plus the officer support I gave them. What is funny is the Ming basically have no navy, and we have Korea now with their only 100 or so ships now, although a lot of those are heavy ships. I'm actually holding off building heavy ships myself. I don't want to accidentally become the naval hegemony, which would stop me using the destroy hegemony CB on the Ming. So we're likely going to stick with galleys and light ships for the foreseeable future. And here comes the Age of Reformation. This is one of the few ages I actually like to go the mill focus for this +1 hostile attrition, and perhaps more importantly, this +20% siege ability. As forts get bigger and bigger and become stronger and stronger, we really want to siege them down as fast as possible, which siege ability helps with. And the extra +1 attrition is nice. I don't think admin offers nearly as good benefits. I guess an extra bond, an increase to minting is valuable, but I find that this age is usually the age where we start just making ridiculous sums of money. To be fair, we are behind, obviously, tech-wise. We're still trying to increase our relationships with certain nations who are maybe making things a little harder for us than they need to be, so that we can gain access to the new institutions. We still haven't got the institutions from the Age of Discovery. But yeah, I think we're going to go mill. Nothing in Diplo or admin focus really speaks to me. There's a lot of stuff we want to get here, though. We want to get that extra government reform. We want that 10% crown power and the extra cabinet seat. And then we can get another 10% crown power on the other side, down here, due to us being a Shinto religion. Also 2 bonuses to reinforcement speed. Really, I just want it all, so we'll see about grabbing it all. Depending on how long it takes us to get those extra techs for the Age of Discovery, we might end up researching all of these before we gain access to their said techs. We're still fighting with the Ming, of course. We've dealt more casualties. Our casualties are quite high, but these are all from the Wu, really. I didn't really want to bring the Wu in. If I'd had a choice, I would have left them out, specifically for that reason. They've actually fallen below the 1 million men they normally wander around with. Since their armies are nearly all entirely levies, we can win the fights pretty easily. It's just a matter, in the case of our regulars, of staying properly supplied with soldiers. As you can imagine, destroying wave after wave of Ming men, even when we win, does start to wear us down after a point. Alright, we're going to make peace. We're going to let the Ming humiliate us. We could continue this war longer and fight them to a white peace, but we really want to end it as soon as possible. Let's actually check. The CB with the Ming ends in 1546. The truce will last until 1548, so we are going to have to make another CB, which isn't a big deal or the end of the world. We can just freely do that. As long as we're ready to declare a war on them before the truce ends, it should be trivial just attacking them after the fact. As long as we're the ones to attack them, we'll be able to, of course, take lots of territory, and we can avoid calling people like Wu in. There's no real reason to bring Wu in, because he'll just get swarmed. We could potentially call him in once we've dealt with the Ming, and he could strike them from behind and swarm all over them with his very large swarm of units. Since we're in the Age of Reformation now, we can also get access to administration of shipyards, the second naval government reform, which will again help with us pushing control through our ports, as well as giving us an extra naval governor. Not that we've really been using naval governors just yet, but once we annex our first vassal in Korea, this guy here, who is currently undergoing annexation, will begin to start using them. And as we start to expand into Ming, we'll probably won't make any more vassals. I think we've made enough. We might expand Wu so that they reach their full height. They have a few cores still on Ming territory that we could give over to them. But we're probably just going to start taking China proper for ourselves. We, of course, want to take the Mandate too. On an unrelated note, we finally made it down to the West Coast region, or California, as it's known in some strange regions of the world. I suppose this bit up here is Cascadia, but we need a new name. We need a name for our colony we're going to put here in the West Coast. We also need a name for Australia, and we need a name for Eastern Siberia. Feel free to share yours. I think I forgot to say that what we've called our colony up here in Alaska. We have, of course, called them Araska, the Japanese spelling, pronunciation of Alaska, but we need more names. So feel free to share some if you have any. Next time we'll see about actually dismembering the Ming proper. We're probably going to need more manpower though. We're also going to have to move our capital back down to Australia so we can release this new colony in the East Coast, so I'll need to remember to do that. I'm taking very special care to make sure that I don't accidentally give land in the West Coast to Alaska, We want those borders to be nice and neat after all. But either way, I think we'll leave things here for today. Thank you for watching. I do hope you enjoyed this video. We have gained access to Egypt. We just need to discover Egypt's capital, and then we could get access to tech from them. With all that said, I'll again thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.